Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Good evening. Welcome to the Pivotal Podspective. Well, this is the show that Adrian and I have been building up over the last couple of months, where we chat to extraordinaires all over the globe who are coming here to chat to all of us, you guys, us, about their ways, their tips, their tricks, their hints, their pivotal ideas. They're going to help you to level up personally and professionally. So this evening, we have our guest, PR strategist and author extraordinaire, Nicola J. Rowley.
Hello.
Hello, Nicola.
How you doing?
What a welcome. I love it. It's great.
Good. We're pleased. And how are you doing this evening?
Yeah, really good. Really good. Thank you.
Yeah. And you're not a million miles away from here, are you? You're actually in Essex, aren't you?
I'm not in Essex tonight.
Oh, you're not in Essex tonight?
No, not tonight. I'm in Surrey. So
now.
I am from Essex. So I'm very, very proud Essex girl. So yeah, I'm born and bred in Essex, went to school in Essex, and yeah.
Okay, so we'll edit that bit out, Adrian. Yeah, no, I'm joking.
Yeah. We're just gonna leave I am. So I am. We're just gonna take the not from I am not from Essex. Or not in Essex.
Yeah. Completely different point.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you very much for welcome to the show. We've been chatting to all sorts of people. In fact, we had somebody that did books recently and went through quite interesting process of how to be a #1 bestseller on Amazon. And there are definitely different theories on that side. Good and bad, as I'm sure you're aware, ways of promoting yourself and getting yourselves out there. But you combine the PR strategies and being an author as well. You've got a story behind being an author. So we cover these things in the show, which I think is quite interesting and diverse as well. So we like that.
And I think tonight we're going to become kids and entrepreneur kids, let's say, something like that. Am I right?
Yeah, completely. It's all about imagining and dreaming as big as you possibly can, and then following the stages to be able to get yourself there.
Well, I'm not being funny, but I haven't actually stopped being a kid yet, to be fair. So I don't need to become
Perfect.
one. I already am.
Yeah.
I'm just a kid with facial hair, basically.
You kind of reminded us just before the show, in the backstage when.
Everybody that's watching this, this is going out live on across 5 different Facebook profiles, also our YouTube channel as well, which is getting going, is building up. So I urge you, if you can get over there, subscribe on YouTube as well. We've got loads of stuff coming up over the next month, and we're on Twitter as well. But before we started recording, I don't know what I did, but I did a technical boo-boo. I fucked up basically, and I had 2 of these StreamYards open, so it was repeating everything. I saw like a feedback, and I couldn't stop laughing. In fact, I've still got tears in the corners of my eyes from laughing too much. But anyway, so if you are watching this, this will be turned into a podcast very soon as well. I'm going to tell you all about that towards the end of the show. Nicola, PR strategist, author. I mean, you've got that. They're 2 quite different things, but it's all about storytelling, right?
It absolutely is all about storytelling. And the story starts when I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
So it starts right at that point where I'm in the classroom at school in Essex, in Basildon. And the teacher says, right, everyone, I want you to write a story. And everyone goes off and they sit down and they write a story. And I don't stop writing. So something in me just was lit in that moment in time. So I just sat there, and my story was about a cat, a witch, and a spaceship. And even as I'm telling you this now, I'm in that classroom, and I can see myself sitting there writing, and the same feeling that I got, I just was so happy, and I lost myself completely. And I remember the teacher coming over and saying, "Have you finished?" And I was like, "I don't want to finish. Can I just carry on?" And she was just like, "Okay, carry on." And I carried on and carried on. And remember, I was 6 at this point. That story ended up being more than 1,000 words long, which is a lot of words for a 6-year-old to write. And, you know, it was no Shakespearean masterpiece by any means, but they were so impressed that I'd done all of this that they said, would you mind standing up in assembly and reading your story out to everyone? And I was like, no, that's fine. And that then led to the second thing, which I really enjoy doing, which is standing up and talking to people.
Okay.
And presenting. So that kind of led me to everything that I did. I went on and I became, I studied journalism at university because I just wanted to write. But along the way, I discovered broadcasting. So I worked at various radio stations. I started off in Aylesbury, a tiny little station, and I did like a nice little tour around the M25 before I ended up in London. And then I was like, you know, reading the news for Heart FM. I went on to read the news on Radio 1. I was reporting on Radio 1 Newsbeat, and I loved it. But all the time, throughout doing all the kind of crazy shifts, because you do have to sacrifice quite a lot, which is what people don't realize when you're doing those kind of things. They just think, oh, wow, it's really glamorous. But you're stuck in the newsroom. I always remember like Radio 1 overnights. I'd be doing like, you know, 6 p.m. till 6 a.m.
So what DJs were on at that time? When are we talking on Radio 1?
Oh my gosh, John Peel, like the legend that is, and like you'd get to an oh gosh, yeah, there were so many, like Sarah Cox, Chris Moyles, all of those. So Chris Moyles at that point was doing afternoons and weekends, and quite often I would do like weekend news reading for him, and we always got on very well. So we'd always say, "Oh, come down to the studio and have a chat. We'll have a chat about this, that, and the other." And it was him and Comedy Dave at the time.
That's right.
So it'd be like the three of us, like having just a nice little chat.
Religiously, to be fair, yeah,
it was good fun. It was really good fun. But you know, you'd get to the point where you were doing these like late night shifts, and it would get to like, you know, midnight, and you're absolutely exhausted. You're trying to stay awake because you've got to be there till 6 a.m. putting together the news for the morning, for when the morning team come in. And I'm standing there doing an aerobics class because it's the only thing that's going to keep me going. So I'm sure if anyone saw like the security cameras and stuff, there's me jumping up and down because I was just like, oh gosh, otherwise I'm just going to keel over and just fall asleep. But then after that, I carried on and I went into TV, and I worked for the BBC News channel for several years, 10 o'clock news. And when I left the BBC, I was working as an entertainment reporter for BBC Three. And it always sounds really glamorous, but there are moments where it's really not. And there was always something missing. So I wanted to do something more creative, and I was able to take redundancy. So I did. And I moved across into communications, and that's where I started working in PR. And I just wanted to have more of a skill set, shall we say. And so, I worked in PR. I did these enormous campaigns. I did everything from floating a polar bear down the Thames to, you know, launching a TV channel with a giant Mr. Darcy in the Serpentine. And that went global and then won loads and loads of awards. And I worked with lots and lots of celebrities. And it was really good fun. And I really, really enjoyed it. But again, there was always something missing, and I couldn't quite fathom out what it was. So then I decided, right, well, maybe I need to do something more creatively. So I launched my own photography business and was running that quite successfully. And it was just bringing in a little bit of money on the side while I was working full time. And I actually did like a big launch for the business, and it was really lovely. And I did the launch in the October, and in the November, I found out that I was pregnant, and I was like, that kind of scuppered a few things.
Not expected then, no?
No, well, it was hoped for, but it had taken such a long time to happen that it was kind of like, well, we're never sure what's going to happen.
But then life does these things, doesn't it? Then you've been planning all these other things, and it all happens at once.
Yeah, exactly. So I pulled back on the photography, but what actually happened as soon as my son came along was that I was like, actually, it made me reassess absolutely everything. And I'd always been meaning to write a book, always. And I'd wanted to write a book for years and years and years, like way back when. And, you know, I might have started things, but I never saw it through and I never finished it. And when he came along, one of the first things I did with him when he was just a few weeks old was I started reading with him. And we used to like sit down together, and I just saw the enjoyment that he got from turning the pages of a book. And I was just like, there's something really quite magical about this. And then when he was about 3 months old, we took him swimming, and there was a little girl that was lying next to him. We were just getting them changed, and she was crying her eyes out. She couldn't stop crying. And instinctively, he literally just looked at her, held out his hand, held her hand, and just gave her the biggest smile ever. And she just stopped. I mean, I think it was a combination of shock, but also someone saying to her, it's all right. And up until that point, her mum had been trying desperately to placate her, and nothing had worked. And he just instinctively did this. And it just made me think, actually, wouldn't that be really lovely if you had a character in a book who reaches out to someone else and through small acts of kindness, such as a smile, can change someone's life, or like they just make their lives just that little bit better. And that's how the first book came about, James and the Amazing Gift.
Right. Okay. Well, very, very cool. That's a story. That's a story that sort of built up
on its own. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So you worked years in becoming an author, then basically. Years to get to that stage. And do you feel that all of the sort of skills that you built up over those years helped to hone you into the author that you are?
Definitely. I think it's one of those things that if I hadn't have understood how journalists work, if I hadn't have understood how PR works, so how to get publicity and utilize publicity in terms of, being able to use it to promote your own brand, be able to really put yourself out there and not be thinking that it's about you, then I wouldn't have had the success that I did. But what happened was when that first book came out, I started getting more people talking about it. And initially I had, I guess I had imposter syndrome. I was like, well, I don't know anything about publicizing books. So, how's this going to work? And so I actually employed a PR company to help me get the book out there.
Oh, right.
We didn't get anywhere. And I was like, look, people need to know about this story. So I'm just going to do it myself. Right. And the minute I just was like, I'm just going to do it myself. I can't do any worse than what's just happened. Yeah. So I was like in Woman and Home magazine. I was in the Daily Mirror. I was in Female First. I was everywhere, basically.
So talk about it then. So what did you do? Exactly. An editorial?
Yeah. So with the Daily Mirror, for instance, I rang up a contact that I'd worked with on previous things and just said, look, I've written a book. I'm trying to find a way to be able to get this out there. Is there anything that we could do on the business pages? And she was just like, do you know what? Probably the best thing for us to do is we'll come up with a question, or you'll send in a question, and we'll work on that together. But we'd known each other because I'd built up that relationship and that rapport. Right. And then the next minute, there's a photographer with me taking pictures, and then there's, and then it became like a full page in the Mirror. Wow. And then from there, like Woman and Home, while I'd been, I'd literally just probably about 8 weeks after giving birth, they were looking for people who were like, who'd done something in their life at a certain stage. Now, I gave birth when I was 40. So they were like, oh, could you be the mum at 40? And I was like, yeah, that's fine. So we'd already had a shoot already done, and that was all very lovely. But what they wanted to do was like a follow-up to some of the people that have been in Woman and Home magazine in terms of what else had they gone on to do since they'd been featured in the magazine. Well, for me, when I said to them, well, I've written a book and it's actually got an element that goes to charity, and they were like, well, this ticks all the boxes. So then they ran another feature about me and what I'd done since I'd been in the magazine. Okay. So, and then there were things like, Female First, where you could talk about, top 10 things I'd like my readers to know about me as an author. And I became a Huffington Post blogger. So I was talking all around the messaging to do with the book.
Okay.
So when you're writing a book, think about the messaging that's contained within it. Or if you're doing any PR, really think about the messaging that's in there. It's never about selling.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of people think it's all about selling. It's not. It's all about the story. So your story will enable you to connect with someone else. People buy from people.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to think about where your story starts, what's the starting point, and where it actually takes you. So in the case of the first book, it was all around kindness, but there was also a theme around the elderly. So I basically teamed up with Contact the Elderly as a charity, and £1 from every copy sold from that book went to them.
Okay.
And by doing it like that, I could then talk around, you know, why we need to bridge the gap between the young and the elderly, why, you know, loneliness is a really big thing at Christmas time, but it's also a really big thing at any time of the year.
Uh-huh.
And so you can see what I was doing, and that's just for a children's book. It's about pulling out the angles that are of interest and then writing about them. And it really worked, because then celebrities started picking up the book, and then they started tweeting about it and posting about it, and then everyone was talking about it. And then someone said to me, well, what are you doing now? And I was like, oh, I hadn't thought about that, but okay, fine. So I wrote the second book, knowing that I had to make the second book even bigger than the first.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where James and the Birthday Balloon came along. And that's when I approached Dr. Ranj, so TV's Dr. Ranj, and he narrated the audiobook version for James and the Birthday Balloon.
Right. Okay. A couple of people have made comments. My mum, of course, obviously.
Hello, Elliot's mum.
All the way from Spain. I hope you're as hot as we are in the UK at the moment. And Fern Elise King, who was on the show last week. Was it last week she was on?
Yes, yeah. Hello, Fern.
Hello, guys. Morning. Morning where Fern is in the States, in Australia, which is it's about 6 o'clock in the morning there. How did you source the places to profile?
What, in terms of the books, what I was going to do?
No, I think she's probably talking about where you source the places to put things into. So I'm assuming she means like you were talking about newspapers and things like that. So how do you source those? I'm assuming, Fern, if you could maybe clarify that for us. But I think it's knowing your audience. So with everything, like if you're a business owner, you should, if you're going to be a successful business owner, know who your ideal client is. So where do they hang out? What do they do? What media do they consume? So do they listen to podcasts like this one? Do they read magazines? Do they listen to the radio? What is it that they do, and where are they? Where are they hanging out? Where are they spending their little bit of downtime that they do have? Yeah.
And then you target those places, because those are the people that you're trying to reach. And once you work that out, then you effectively target the right people. So for me, I knew very early on that the people that were making the majority, not all of them, but the majority of the buying decisions around books, picture books in particular, for 0 to 7s, which is where my book kind of, my first 2 books fell, they're mums. So I made sure that I was making really good connections with mummy bloggers. I was speaking to them all the time. I was making sure that I was talking about being a mum in business. I was talking about what it's like having a full-time job, writing books, running a photography business. I was talking about all of those things and doing the juggle. Mm-hmm. And then in 2017, a few things happened. So 2016, the first book came out. So James and the Amazing Gift came out. And in November of that year, my dad sadly passed away. And that's okay. Don't worry. So with that, what happened was it made me think I really need to bring out the story that I should have been telling all along. So when I was 9, my dad created a character for me at bedtime stories called Mug the Wump. And he was a magical wizard who lived in a wood, and he had a blue Burmese cat. And that's about as much as I can remember from from those stories.
Okay.
At the time, I begged him to write it down. And he was like, yeah. You draw a picture of what you think the wizard looks like, and I'll write the story. Well, I drew it. I mean, I was 9. It was rubbish, but it stayed on our garage wall for years and years and years. This picture of the wizard as a reminder to him to write the story.
Uh-huh.
You know, it's like anything. Life got in the way. You know, there was always something else to do. There was something else to be busy about, or there was something else, and he never wrote it down. And so when he passed away, I was just like, actually, I really want to do this like in his memory.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2017, I'd finished my contract. I was working for BBC Worldwide at the time in publicity, and I'd finished my contract, and I took 6 weeks off. And for 5 hours a day, for 6 weeks, I wrote Mug the Wumph, the Dancing Wizard. And I literally just sat there. I like dedicated every single moment that I could possibly find to writing this book.
Mm-hmm.
And then I brought it out during lockdown this year. But it's taken 37 years for this book to come out, because it literally was that seed that he planted way back when I was 9, all the way through to now. But the story, and the reason that I brought it out in lockdown, is because so many children really need a sense of escapism now. They really need to have a magical adventure or something where they can lose themselves in a story that's just in a different world. And so that's why I brought it out.
Right. Okay. Well, listen, I mean, it's a very interesting story about on the author side. What I would like to know is what you've got as ideas to help other people to either, you know, to launch a book, or, you know, something pivotal that you've got, something that is really going to help other people that either are being authors, or whether it's the PR that you use on that side. You know, love your story. Absolutely love that. But I think it's quite important to find out something that, you know, that you've got that you can sort of pass over as something that's going to help other people, because that's what we're about here. It's all pivotal ideas and things that are going to help people. So what is it that you use, do you think, that's really helped you to get your books out there? And there's plenty of people through lockdown that have become authors now, have been wanting to write books for years, and now they've had the time through lockdown, so they've had they've had the pen, and they've started writing. And the amount of people I saw on Facebook and talking about that they've written a book that they've wanted to write, I'm sure some of those people are going to go back to work, and that book's just going to sit there. It's never going to do anything with it. We had a guest on a couple of weeks ago about, as I said, getting that into Amazon and playing about with that, and getting your messaging right, which you said earlier on. And making sure that you've got keywords in a title as well. Is that an important area? Is that something that you would do to leverage, the marketing and to move that out there?
I haven't with my children's books. I have to be honest. I haven't done that. But what I have done is I built a brand. Right. So I didn't just. So basically what happened, I was one of those people, by the way. So after I wrote James and the Amazing Gift, I was like, I've written a book. This is amazing. And then I promptly left it on my computer for 6 months. So I did that. So if you're listening to this or watching this and you're kind of like, okay, I've written a book, now what do I do? I was exactly the same. But actually, the best thing to do is, once you've written it, is to put it away for a couple of weeks or so, and then go back to it. Because you've then got to start the editing process. Because what you have written, it may well have felt like it was amazing at the time, but there's a massive editing process that you need to go through. And you've got to do this like several times over to get a book or a manuscript or whatever to be perfect. And I would always recommend going and having a copy edit and a line edit and a proofread and everything. Get professionals in to help you do it all, because there's stuff that you will miss. You're too close to things. So always invest in that side of things. Then make sure, if you want this to become a much bigger thing, if you're thinking, right, I want to become, I want to be able to actually quite like to leave my job that I'm doing now, and I want to become an author, you've got to think, you've got to have a plan. It can't just be like, great, I've written a book, now I'm going to leave my job. And I've done that in the past where I just, you know, when I left that role at the BBC, I was kind of like, right, I'm just going to go off and I'm going to run my Working Mum Association and look after the working mums, and I'm going to write this book, Mug the Wumph. And okay, but I hadn't thought about what would come next and what was actually bringing in the money.
Right.
So by the time that I'd done my book and I'd written it all for the second time around, what I actually did was I did take on another job. But I knew it was only for a year. And then I strategically planned out everything. So what I thought at the time I was going to be doing was the photography and making that even bigger.
Sure.
So what I did was I started off at the start of 2018. I had 8 weddings booked in. And I was like, right, I know that by the time I get to May, when I need to have my notice in. So I worked back. So I knew that realistically, if I was going to be there for my son and be the mum on the school gates that I wanted to be for when he started in reception, I needed to have handed my notice in on the 31st, like, you know, basically left work on the 31st of August. So I work backwards, and that's the best way to do it with anything that you do. So if you've got something in mind that you want to achieve, start with the end point and then work backwards. So I knew that I had a 3-month notice period. So went back to May. So by the 31st of May, I needed to have had enough weddings booked in that was going to sustain me to get to that point where I could hand my notice in. And if I didn't make it, I wasn't going to be there for him. It's a big incentive. So I worked really, really hard between January and April, in effect. And I ended up with 25 weddings, and I booked them all in. Yeah, I was like, honestly, and I was working full time, and I was also writing another book as well at the moment at that time. So I was getting up at 4 a.m. and I was writing for 2 hours. Then I was getting ready to go to work, doing a full day at work, and it was quite a full-on job over at Thorpe Park. And then I would then come home, and then I'd plan out everything and get everything ready. And sometimes I'd be taking phone calls while I was at work, talking to couples about their weddings. And, you know, if you can do it, do it. Like if you've got a plan, see your plan through. And I was laser focused about what I needed to do. And by the time it got to the 31st of May, handed my notice in, worked up until the 31st of August, and then worked as a freelancer for them. I think it was like 2 or 3 days a week up until the end of October. So that just gave me a little bit of a buffer. And again, just think about, like, you know, you've got enough behind you, enough money behind you so that you're okay. So that's how I managed to do it. And I think being really kind of goal focused, having loads of objectives in place, it really does help. And so with anything that you do in terms of books, have a goal in mind that you want to do. As there are a certain number of books that you want to sell, how are you going to sell them? Work out each stage. Now, right now, it's really difficult to be able to sell books in terms of, usually I'd say, go into schools, do school visits. And that's a brilliant way to reach your ideal audience and be able to do it. We can't do that at the moment. So what I've been doing is reaching out to a lot of primary school teachers directly and sending them copies of my book. So then they're aware of it, and then they tell the pupils about it.
Right.
And as and when I can, I will start going back to do school visits and seeing people and talking about stuff as well. But you have to think about how you're going to be able to get to that end goal. Always. It's
a tough market, though. You know, being an author and getting and launching a book, it's not just speaking to a few people and getting them to buy copies of your book, isn't it? You've got to market it, you've got to get it out there. Amazon is a great tool to use. We've learned this recently. In fact, you know, we've known this for a while, but I didn't realize quite how powerful you could do it. So you don't need to invest huge amounts of money to get loads of prints done. You can, in essence, get them as they purchase. Amazon print them and you earn money off the back of it. Is that a route that you would recommend going down, doing stuff like that?
Yes, if you have had some professional help. It's no good just going out there and just saying, great, I've got a book. Quite a lot of people come to me and they're saying, oh my gosh, Nicola, I've seen what you've done and I've got a children's book. And you say, oh, great, send me the link or, where it is. And then they'll send it to you. And then they've got 2 reviews and you're like, you got 2 reviews. You have not thought about the marketing. You've not thought about the end game and how to get that book out there, because you absolutely have to build on your reviews, because you know what it's like. If you look on Amazon and you're thinking, oh, I'm looking for something, maybe a children's book, maybe it's an adult book or whatever, you are swayed by reviews. So if people are raving about something, you're like, oh, yeah, that looks quite good. You might click on a couple of the reviews, see what they say, but you're more likely to purchase it as a result. If loads of people are all saying the same thing, there's a reason why they're all saying the same thing.
Okay, so for someone like me, for example, I mean, what age range are your books, your children's books aimed at?
So the 2 picture books are 0 to 7s, and Mug the Wump, the Dancing Wizard is 7 to 12s. Okay,
so for example, how would I find your book if I was looking? How would you find me to want to buy your book, for example? Because if I think about my son and he likes, Williams's books and bits and pieces like that, he likes a particular sort of type of book. They're mainstream. I just go to Amazon, I look at it, I order it, or, I can go to a supermarket and go and get it. How am I going to find books like yours, for example, and where are they? Because I wouldn't have a Scooby-Doo how to find those. So how would you find me to go, oh, if he likes that sort of book, then I've got a book for you and your son?
PR is a great way to be able to do that.
Okay.
Just putting yourself out there and being able to tell your story and talking about what you've done, how you've done it, where you've got to, where you are, making sure that you've got that website, you're blogging all the time, so you're talking about it. I'm a bit rubbish at the whole blogging side of things, but when I first started out, regularly every single week to build the audience so that you've got people in your audience who know about you. And the more kind of things that you do, the more kind of schools that you visit, you go in there, when people are buying copies of the book, you get the parents to sign forms that say, actually, I would like to hear from the author again. So they get added to a mailing list. And when they're added to your mailing list, when you've got new news or you've got new things to talk about, then you're emailing those as well. So you've got email marketing covered off. So you're starting to widen that net of people that know about you. And social media is a wonderful thing as well. I mean, when we went into lockdown, and I could see what was going to happen. And I remember they announced the Keep Fit with Joe. And they announced it on I think it was either the Thursday or the Friday, just before they said, right, that's it, the schools are going to close and they won't be going back on the Monday. For that Monday, I'd already got prepared that I was going to do story times. So I set up story times. And as a result, I made sure that I was in Metro, I was in the Daily Telegraph, and they were talking about, all the things that you could do during lockdown. They were talking about my story times. And then loads of people that I knew online and people, their friends and everything else, and the network started growing and growing and growing. Everyone was talking about the fact that I was doing these story times. I started off doing them at 11 a.m. every morning and then 2 p.m. in the afternoon for slightly older children. And this went on throughout the whole of lockdown that I was doing these. And just getting that kind of people coming to you and everything else, and people being like, yes, oh my gosh, we desperately need something, because, parents were in panic mode in terms of, oh my gosh, we've got to homeschool, but we've still got to work if we've got a job still. And we've got to do everything. And how are we going to do that? Whereas these provided kind of 20-minute breather for them. They could plonk their children in front of, a tablet or something else, and there's me reading them a story. And it just gave them that little bit of space. And, my audience grew astronomically during that time. And loads of people were signing up because I had a freebie on the page saying, you know, you can download free colouring sheets. So everyone was like, oh my gosh, free colouring sheets, great. And so then they were added to my mailing list. So when it comes down to like selling the book, you've got more people and people that know all the things that you're doing. So you've got to think about everything quite strategically. And I did the story times because I wanted to help. It wasn't for any other reason. I literally just wanted to do that. And actually what it did do is it gave me an incredible focus for during that time when it could have been quite difficult. I actually really loved the fact that I had something every single day that I was going to do and I was going to focus on.
Right. So you think it's important to put yourself out there first, as opposed to putting out what the book would be about? So, because that, I mean, with all due respect, I'm not interested in necessarily the author. I'm interested in what the book's going to give me. I mean, I don't want to know about, you know, Williams's history and what he does. I want to know that the book's going to be entertaining and things like that. So that's down to how he does his PR, how he does his marketing for that book about the story, and obviously he's created this sort of feel around the sort of the books that he writes. So that's important to me as a buyer, as a consumer, for example, for my children, my child. And I haven't heard about that. So how do you get that out there? Because you've got, I mean, I don't know that much about your book at the moment. I know about you and I know about your history. But if I want to go, well, I want to book in that genre and that sort of feel, that sort of story, that sort of storyline. How do you then put that out there? Because that's not an easy thing to do. I don't see a lot of that done on social media, for example.
My question would be, you know, when you said about people that have just like 2 reviews and stuff like that, how do you get more reviews, for example, you know, for your books and all this?
Yeah. Okay. So the first one, I think, like, whenever you do any PR, so you can do, there's like quite clever ways to be able to do PR that people might not be aware of. So competitions are brilliant. Teaming up with bloggers are really good because then they will review the book. They will talk about the book. So that's a really great way to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And some bloggers will also post reviews on Amazon. Some will, some won't. But, you know, on the whole, they tend to. So that's a brilliant way for you to be able to reach a much bigger audience. Plus, people are finding out about the book at the same time.
So there's bloggers that literally specifically focus around
that niche
or stories and that niche.
Yeah, and it's like it's knowing your audience. So who would be buying your book? And when you're talking about children and children's stories, it tends to be parent bloggers. So, and predominantly mums. It's not always. I mean, sometimes the dads are really brilliant, but on the whole, mummy bloggers are more prolific than the dads. So, you know, aim more for them. But if you can find some brilliant daddy bloggers that review books as well, and there's a few that do amazing reviews now. They weren't around at the time when I was doing the picture books, but you know, you get them to review it and they've got a following. You're already out there to their audience. So that's how you're starting to increase your reach, your share, and the awareness. Now, obviously, at this point, you're also building your own audience and you're talking to them about everything that you're doing. You're not hiding away. So a lot of people kind of go, oh, right, okay, so I know that PR is really valuable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an interview. I'm going to be on my local radio station, for instance. So I'm going to go out there and I'm going to speak to BBC Essex or BBC Sussex or Surrey. And that's it. So they do the interview and then they don't actually tell anyone that they've done the interview. So they go out there and they do it and then they're like, oh, that was good. I did some PR. Or they might not have thought about their key messaging so enough to be able to pull everything together. And a prime example of all of this was this year, I actually had coronavirus and I ended up writing a piece for the Daily Telegraph where I was interviewed and then they put it all together for me. And as part of that, we talked about the fact that I was a PR strategist and the name of my company and all of those kind of things. And you'd be surprised how many people, like especially journalists, now find that piece. And then they come to me and they say, can you talk about, being fit and healthy and the importance of being fit and healthy after having, COVID? And I'm like, yeah, of course. But as part of those interviews, I will also talk about the importance of all of us having mental wellness, and especially for children, the importance of, being happy and healthy, and how books can really help with that process. And, I spin it around till I start talking about the book. And I've done that on like 5 Live and, LBC and, and ITV News even came to me when J.K. Rowling brought out like the Ichabod stories. And they said, well, we're looking for an author. Could you do something? I was like, yeah, of course. Could you somehow we need to get my book in there. So they do filmed thing. And there's me sitting there reading a copy of my book. And it was actually on the week of release. And I'm on the ITV Evening News. That is how you do PR. And that is how it's almost like a trail of breadcrumbs. You have to think of how, you were saying about like, how do people find you? It's through a trail of breadcrumbs. So eventually someone will say, have you heard about that book? I saw that girl reading that book, or she was talking about that J.K. Rowling thing on ITV the other night. I heard her on 5 Live. Oh my gosh, was that girl that's in Surrey and she's doing X, Y, Z? That's how it works. So that's how plus with the bloggers, plus you're talking about it all the time and you've got the key messaging. That's how you do it. But Adrian, in terms of your question, in terms of how do you get more reviews, bloggers is a lot of it. But then also, there's never any harm in terms of running promotions. So through KDP on Amazon, I'm sure you covered all of this anyway with your other guest. But through KDP,
no, not really. So that's why I just wanted to open. Because we haven't.
Yeah. So what you want to do?
You had a full strategy and training on how to get your sort of book into Amazon and how to sell that and how the whole thing worked basically.
Yeah, but that was like the next step, the reviews, and we haven't discussed about that. And I knew this is going to come, so that's why I've asked you.
Yeah. So the way that Amazon works and the algorithm and everything else is it works if the majority of the people that buy the book are they're verified purchases. So they can tell that people have bought a book or downloaded it. And so they're more like, they will give more credibility to those people that have done that. Yeah. And then they place them much higher up the kind of rankings. That's why every time you see, if you go on and you look at any book, if you go into the reviews where it says verified purchase, verified purchase, verified purchase, those are the ones that are at the top because they're the ones that they think matter more. Because of course for them, they're running a business. So they're the people that have actually bought them. There are some people you can gift books to, and they can, they will go on and they will still do reviews for you. And that is a way to do it as well. But what I would do is do like a discounted price, tell people that you're doing it, and drive everyone to it. There's Facebook ads, there's Amazon ads, there's all kinds of things that you can do to really make sure that it becomes as big as possible. And it's exactly what happened with my book. Although actually, funnily enough, we were actually trying to do promotion in America because the publisher that's brought out Mug the Wump is actually an American publisher. So what I was actually planning on doing in June was to become a bestseller in America. We did, but the all of the categories and everything weren't quite as they needed to be. But what subsequently happened is I was like sitting there at 9 o'clock at night and I looked at the positioning for where my book was in the UK, and it was doing really, really well in one of the categories. And I was like, do you know what? I'm at like number 9. I wonder whether we could push this to get this so that it becomes even bigger. And so I literally rallied everyone I could think of and was like, get on it now. Like literally download this book, get out there, just do whatever you can to help. And everyone did it, and it was amazing. And it was literally, it became like a little army. And we were like 9:30 at night. We were still going till 1 a.m. And then it dropped that it was a #1 bestseller on Amazon. But we just like it had the momentum, and then I just kept going with it.
Yeah.
And then it stayed that way for quite a bit afterwards as well. And it's just keeping that momentum going. So it's a combination now for me to go back to all of those people and be like, now that you've read the book, can you please leave a review?
Yeah.
And sometimes it feels like it's like extracting teeth. I can't even begin to tell you, because people are like, oh my God, it was so good. I promise you, I'll leave that review. And the amount of people that have said that, and then you're like,
listen,
where's the review?
bad review. People do bad reviews easier than they do good reviews. That's for sure. I mean, I very rarely ever do a review on anything I purchase, even if I get a reminder for stuff. Very rarely,
unless it needs to be a bad review. Yeah, we got it.
No, I wouldn't do that, to be honest. I just wouldn't bother putting one. But very rarely do I do reviews. But you're right; it's difficult to get reviews out of people. Well, listen, what a journey to get through to launching your books and doing what you've done, and adding in the your PR ability to get those out there as well, and being tenacious and going on shows and talking about your book. And I love it. It's a great story. I wish you all the best with your books as well. So the one that's recently come out is called what, and where can people find it?
So it's called Mug the Wumph, the Dancing Wizard. You can find it on Amazon. There's also, I've created a whole website where it's got like a whole magical world. You can meet the characters. You can find out a bit more about the story behind the book. And that's at mugthewumph.com. And it's literally, it's like it would take you into that magical world.
Wow, lovely. And where can everybody find you, Nicola J. Rowley? Where can they find you if they want to see you and you see what you do PR wise, and your photograph business as well, and your photography business? Sorry, photograph business, your photography business as well. So where can they find you?
The best way to find me is usually on Facebook. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, but it's usually Facebook. That's usually where I hang out the most. It's at author Nicola J. Rowley. I also run a group. If you're interested in PR and understanding a bit more about how does PR work, is it a dark art? How, what are the ins and outs of it? How can I utilize that? If you're running your own business, then head on over to Facebook, and the group is called the Communications Community. And it's brilliant because we've got 300 odd people in there, but they're all entrepreneurs or they're journalists as well. So they're journalists that I know, and sometimes they post in there, like, if they're looking for people and they want to feature them.
Great. Sounds like a good group. We'll make sure there's if you can drop a link into the comments as well for your group, that sounds cool. I think there'll be a lot of people that'll be interested in that. I did want to cover more about PR, so maybe we'll do that at another stage. But yeah, lovely. Thanks very much for coming on the show and chatting about your books. And make sure you drop some links into the comments so we can put those out there as well, so people know where to find you. Anything else you want to finish off with, Adrian, before we sort of wrap up this show this evening?
No, I'm just gonna read the book probably, and I just checked the Mug the Wumph website right now actually and looked at it. Yeah, so
you're going into the magical world, are you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've seen you have a video as well, like a trailer or something like that.
Yeah, so it's about setting the scene again, telling that story. So like with the book trailer, it's really important to have a book trailer. Some people overlook the fact having a book trailer. They just think, right, I've written the book, everything's there. It's not, 70% of the work is actually marketing, and, having a trailer where people can actually see how things look and how the feel of it and everything else. It does make a massive difference. It does. The only thing that I would like to say is never give up on your dreams. It took me 40 years to write up the first book. Never ever give up on something that makes you incredibly happy. And we've all got that one thing. It's our gift or something that we've been given. Never ever give up on that. And if you can dream it and you believe it, then you absolutely can achieve it. Just break it down into those smaller sized goals so it doesn't feel so overwhelming and huge. Break it down into smaller goals and then work towards them consistently, and then you'll get there.
Definitely.
Perfect.
No wiser words being spoken. Thank you very much for that. Well, listen, if you want to know more about Nicola's book and or books, I should say, then there will be some links around the posts. And if you want to hear this as a podcast, then this will probably be going out in September at some stage. So you better listen to that back. But you can watch it back. It's on YouTube as well. You can check out what Essex Business Radio is doing. We haven't got time this evening to tell you about what is coming up with Essex Business Radio and a few changes that are happening, but I did give you a teaser last week to let you know that something's going on. We will chat about that. In fact, I think Adrian and I are probably going to do another little show aside from the lives we do to talk about that over the next few days. So look out for some changes there, and you can find out all the news and what's going to be going on moving forward. September, we've got big stuff coming up, so we're going to tell you about that over the next couple of weeks, and you can find that out on Essex Business Radio across pretty well every social media platform. Otherwise, on Twitter, it's Essex Biz Radio, BIZZ, and download our free app for the podcast. We have got loads of podcasts that are going to be coming up very soon. We are waiting for something to happen with Essex Business Radio before those podcasts go up, so just bear with us. We just want to get it right first. I know it doesn't need to be perfect, but we are, so bear with us, and but keep an eye out across our social for that. So thanks again. Thanks very much, Nicola. Absolute pleasure getting you on the show. Adrian Dorobantu, thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies and gents.
We messed up the beginning because I didn't actually introduce myself or you, I don't think, this evening, did we?
You said you with my co-host Adrian, so that
did I really do that? Did I? That's become that normal now that I didn't even realise I'd done that. Well, I have been your host, Elliot Brown. Adrian has been my co-host, and Nicola has been our guest extraordinaire this evening on the pivotal Podspective. Thanks very much for joining us. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow for another guest at 9 p.m. UK time across pretty well everywhere. Just check it out. So otherwise, we're going to sign off for now. So it's ciao for now.
Brown cow.